Good afternoon. My name is Cassa Heron. I use she, her pronouns. I come to you from Louisville, Kentucky, where I am co-founder of the Louisville Association for Community Economics, which is a nonprofit cooperative developer, and we're supporting and leading the efforts to open the Louisville Community Grocery, which will be 15, maybe to 19,000 square feet. I don't know where we are, Don.
16 at the moment.
We're about 16 square foot, high quality grocery store in a neighborhood close to downtown in Louisville, an area that is without a grocery store and has been without one for some time. We are focusing heavily on expanding food access, but also really want our grocery store to be a place where entrepreneurs find a way to market their products, whether they're local entrepreneurs or local and regional farmers. I come from a community organizing background and an urban planner, and bring all of my love for transitioning our economy to this work, really through the lens of local food system development, is kind of how I found my way to the co-ops. Today I'm talking about managing consultants. Our team and I have had the esteemed pleasure of working with Cluminate, of who I am now a consultant with that co-op. Cluminate is a co-op of cooperative consultants, and we've had a great opportunity. We have a great opportunity to work with these wonderful experts, and as we have met other folks, I decided to do a workshop on managing consultants because people have a difficult time working with someone who's an expert to advance your project. And so I thought I would just share some of our successes that we've had working with our team with Cluminate. So for our brief time together, I know that this workshop is billed to like 2:15. I don't know that I have an hour and 15 minutes worth presentation, so you might be able to catch it into somebody else's. But you should learn today when to hire a consultant, how to find the right one, negotiating a contract, and then working cooperatively with the consultant. So why work with a consultant? And throughout the presentation, I'm going to share our story. So that's my context, is what I know. So we started organizing in 2016 and incorporated our nonprofit in 2017 because we were pretty clear that we needed a home for the project. We tried to work through relationships that we had with other nonprofits, the fiscal agency kind of situation. It was kind of clumpy, didn't work. And we met folks at like Cooperation Jackson, Co-op Dayton, eventually, and learned that it's important for co-ops to be a part of a cooperative ecosystem. So we incorporated the nonprofit for that reason, to be the big cousin, the auntie of the co-op, and realized that we had a capacity vacuum. We were organizing, we were really trying to find money to hire an organizer for a while, and figured that nobody really cared about organizing our community, and we would just bite the bullet and just do that ourselves until we found some money to do some other things. And after organizing, learning a lot, doing some outreach in the neighborhoods that we were interested in the grocery store being, we had kind of two conditions for the neighborhoods that we chose. One, neighborhoods that didn't have a grocery store or had recently left, or a grocery store had recently left. And then the other condition was neighborhoods who were already practicing cooperative economics. So there was another group who had this modified CSA called Fresh Stops. The group is called New Roots, sort of like a buying club, but folks are already buying local food. So that was important to us, and they were already practicing cooperative economics. So those are how we chose the neighborhoods. And so after doing some surveying, we partnered with our university to do kind of a couple of rounds of surveys. We knew that we needed a market study. And we started investigating the market study situation and knew that we couldn't do that ourselves, right? So we had to fish that out. We thought that we could maybe work with university partner to do that, but they didn't really have, the co-op chops, and certainly didn't understand grocery store retailing. So that was the needed added capacity. And knowing that we just couldn't do it on our own, even if we had the expertise, we were kind of maxed out because we were really busy organizing and trying to get the co-op act eventually incorporated. So recognizing that you just don't have the manpower and that you need to shift that off to somebody else. Secondly, is also understanding that we just did not have that expertise. And we are a very DIY kind of group. We want to grow the local capacity. That's another reason why we created LACE. We know and understand that we believe in the co-op vision. Like, we caught that bullet and we were like, if we're gonna support other co-ops, if the grocery store is gonna be centered to our restructuring our local economy, that we needed some in-house understanding of co-op development beyond the grocery store. So that was another condition for us to go into the consulting route. And then you gotta have money to pay them. I'm a consultant, and our time is our money. And we've been thankful that some of our Illuminate folks, I think, have given us some free time beyond our grant that we were able to get from the reinvestment fund. And we've been very intentional about, now that we're in this next phase, really making sure that we redo another contract to pay the consultants, because they've given us a lot of their time. It's just important to have that relationship, to not take advantage of people, and to know that you have the money. We were fortunate early on to get money from the Catholic Church, the U.S. Conference of Bishops, I think is what it's called. They have a community development arm of their work. And so they were one of our first big funders, part of the $20,000 that we used. We used 5 of it for our market study. Another 5 to hire, so I don't know if folks have been hearing about the state cooperative development centers. We have one in Kentucky that's housed at the University of Kentucky, and so we paid them to do kind of some investigation in our community. One, again, because we didn't have the capacity. We kind of had the knowledge, so we told them who to go to. And so the Catholics' money were able to pay for that market study and that kind of investigation. And those two things together got us ready for funds from the reinvestment fund. So finding the right consultant. So did folks get to meet Olivia with the reinvestment fund? If you haven't heard of the Healthy Food Financing Initiative money that comes from the feds, the reinvestment fund is the entity that's, so those are federal dollars. The reinvestment fund is sharing that money out with folks like us who are doing startups, in grocery store development. So we applied for the reinvestment fund and were awarded a TA contract, and it's like it's a third party situation, so they don't give us the money, but they have a list of consultants that they work with. And it was a very interesting negotiation with the reinvestment fund when we got this opportunity, because again, we're very DIY, we want to build local capacity. And we didn't know the folks at Illuminate, and I don't even know if you guys were called Illuminate. It may have just been transferring, but we didn't know them. And so we called them up, we talked to them. We talked to the other folks that the reinvestment fund had on their list. We called people who worked with all of those folks, and we spent a lot of time trying to decide if we wanted to work with Illuminate. And when we made that decision, we had another negotiation with the folks at the reinvestment fund that we really wanted some of that money to be housed in Louisville. So the Illuminate folks were outside of Kentucky. And we thought it was really important that we carve out just a little bit of that money to, again, raise our own local capacity. And so we were able to do that. We siphoned off a little bit of that money to pay me to work on our capital raising our preferred shares offering, which didn't even get to finish that because it's so complicated. But we just really wanted to make sure that we were growing our own local capacity, using some of that money, that federal money coming to our local community. And we talked to all kinds of folks to get there. And similarly, we ask all kinds of questions. Ask all the questions that like about how they work, what the intentions are, what has been challenges with them doing that kind of work in other communities, so that you know what you're getting into. Similarly, when we hired our market study consultant, Wicks, is it Mark?
Keith
Wicks, sorry, thank you. Keith Wicks was our market study consultant. And again, we called a ton of people and talked to a lot of people and still weren't really sold on Keith. But we went with him. That was the best offering that we were able to find. And again, we asked a ton of questions of him and folks that they work with, so that we knew what we were working into. And understanding, particularly in the market study world, and particularly if you're working in a low-income community, a Black community, a community of color, the market study ways in which those things are happening don't really line up with our communities. And so we had some really tough conversations with Keith going into it about how his model may not match what we're trying to do. So we knew those things going into it, so we were able to supplement some of the information and be clear about how his model was able to be adapted to our community, and what the things that might be missed. But you don't know those things if you don't ask questions going into it. So you've gotten some money, you found the right consultant, now it's time to negotiate the contract. A lot of times contracts are pretty cut and dry. You just enter into a service agreement and they do their thing and you pay them. We thought it was just very important that in any contract, not necessarily the contract with Illuminate the Reinvestment Fund, because it was like this third party kind of situation, but in other times that we hire consultants, we're just clear about putting our value somewhere in the contract, so that people know who we are and how we work, and so that there's no questions about what are our values, what are the things that we're prioritizing in this relationship, and that it's written. Know what the terms of the contract is. What is it? How long do you want this work to last? What happens if you don't get the work done in the 6 months or whatever? Like I said, allow your stepping out. Usually standard contracts allow you to do that, put that in. How do you end the relationship? And protect your intellectual capital. It's kind of hard and challenging in the co-op space, because we want to share a lot of things, right? Like, it's the co-op way to share across. But there are some things that are proprietary, and you want to protect those things as best you can. And you can't put that in your contract. I'm trying to think if there was a team that had worked in our local community before, and we felt like that they had a better understanding of our local food system. They had done some other work with our local government, but we didn't trust that our information would be proprietary because they had that prior relationship, and our relationship with our local government was very tenuous. So we decided not to work with that group, even though we felt like that they had more knowledge. We didn't trust that they would be working with us in the way in which we valued our community, and that they were gonna honor the relationship with us over the previous relationship with the federal government. So we chose just not to work with them. But that's a call that you make, right? I don't know what else to say. Oh. So this is Keith, and this is us. When we entered into the relationship with Keith, we invited him to our community. If folks are doing market studies, they should come and visit your community. If they don't come and visit your community, you haven't found the right market study consultant. So be sure that they at least spend a half a day or something getting to know you and doing some, like visiting your sites or the neighborhoods that you're working in. And that was an expectation early on, is, are you gonna come see us? He had already said that he was gonna do that, but that was also important to us. But again, be clear about what those expectations are. So your first meeting that you have with the consultant, you wanna kind of preview your time together and have those conversations right there in that first meeting. You also want to be flexible and focused on what you're doing. So we had a X amount of time that we're going to work with Keith. And we knew that, we wanted this market study done in X amount of time. But things come up. Somebody might get sick. Somebody might have to take an expected time away. But you just want to be flexible and working with that person. Hopefully your consultant is just as flexible and innovative, so you might go into a relationship or a project thinking you're going to do something one way, you discover something as you're working. Just know that you got your eyes on the prize for what's the final deliverable, but be flexible, because in this work there's all kinds of stuff that come up that you just don't know. And I think this is one of the most important things, is to have the time and the team to work with the consultant. You don't want to pay a consultant $20,000 for them to do what they do from their desk and only talk to you every blue moon. You want to have this relationship, because again, I believe that as we're growing co-ops, we're growing our own knowledge base. And so it's important that you know and understand how the consultant is moving, how they're doing their work in collaboration with you. And that there's a team of folks that do that. You may have a consultant that might just be like an executive coach for your leader. But your leader should be sharing what the consultant is sharing with you. So it might just be one person managing the consultant. But you want to be sure that the information that the consultant is gathering for you, learning with you, that you're sharing that with your team. We have a team model of how we were working with Keith on the market study. Similarly, when we're working with Colluminate, Don has met tons of folks from our team as he's worked with us on our Performa. And again, it's important that not just myself and Amanda are learning the Performa, which is who he was working with a lot at first. But now we've had other people join that conversation. Amanda and I never wanted this to be us, but we've had to recruit people like, yeah, somebody else should be knowing about the Performa, y'all, like not just us. So again, so that you're sharing the knowledge base, and that your whole team is clear in understanding what that deliverable is, and you're able to use and share it. We have not yet been able to take up, Leela Klein was in the first slide. She was our chief consultant or relationship with Colluminate, and they're just right up the street. We're in Louisville, they're in Dayton, Ohio. It's like 2 hours away. So she keeps inviting us, our team, to come up and visit. We haven't been able to do, I visited Gym City. It's a beautiful, beautiful store. But we haven't quite had our team go up there yet, but we certainly plan to send a team to visit Dayton soon. I think I had one other point about having the time. And it's okay for you to wait. Like, we've got this money, we know we need to do this thing, and if you don't have the personnel, the team, spend the 6 weeks to get the team to manage the consultant. It's okay. I know that a lot of times, folks want to just hurry up and go through the timeline, but sometimes it's okay to take a step back and to be sure that your team is prepared for the support, because you're paying somebody and you want that money to be put to good use. I think that is the end. What kind of questions do y'all have? Does anybody working with the consultant? You don't have to say who or why are you working with the consultant?
We're working, our enterprises, our project is 4 separate enterprises. One is a grocery store. We're working with those consultants because of their expertise. We got a food hub, we got a consultant there. Got a grocery store, we got 2 consultants there, both past GMs. We got a commercial kitchen, shared kitchen, we got a consultant there.
Yeah.
We got a credit union, we got a consultant there. So just, it's like coaches, like offensive coach, defensive coach,
Yes.
quarterback coach.
I love the way you put that, and that's been our progression, right? Like we've had a team of folks from Illuminate, Leela, who has been like my coach, and then we've had Don, who's worked on our Performa. We have Winston Estes, who's going to be starting to work with us as we're developing out the store. Keith did our market study. And now, as I've rolled off of our LACE board as president, and now I'm a consultant with our team. So I'm doing some executive coaching to our new co-directors, and also supporting our capital raising. And we're about to sign on the dotted line for a free piece of property that we're gonna get. And so our next round of consultants will be folks that are really working with us on the pre-development. So we'll be hiring an architect, and then Winston wants us to get the store manager or the store planner pretty soon. So thank you for sharing that. As you go through the different stages, you'll need different people. Who else said they're working with someone?
We are doing a market study, and they're coming in to help us produce contracts. So we're a little different take at Farm Fed. We are bringing in local products and doing light processing, and then being distributors to all of you wonderful co-op grocery stores.
Awesome. Where are you?
In the middle of Illinois, in Mount Pulaski.
Okay.
And so we're really hoping to have a reach from bottom to top of the state, and hopefully the width too. And we also, what we really are trying to do is go in to serve some of the underutilized places like schools, nursing homes, and hospitals, where people don't have access to those types of foods. And by being able to preserve them, we're hoping to serve those institutions in a more efficient manner. And we're working with them to kind of get us to that point.
Will y'all please connect? Reverend Bernadine in the back is from the South Side, and she's one of our clients. I'm coaching them.
Sure.
So that sounds like a nice little marriage there.
Yes, it does. There's been lots of great connections for this. I mean, I've really enjoyed being here, and I've learned this is the first time I've been, so it's a whole new kind of game for me. And it's really interesting to see how all of the innovative things that are happening. But my question is, we did move too fast. Like, this co-op has really just been in fast forward. I didn't come on, they hired me as GM in October, and they had already written a grant with the USDA and decided the consultants that they were gonna hire before I was hired. So now it's my job to kind of bring these consultants in with my new permanent board, who also was not there when these consultants were hired. So you see the issue that I'm having, there's like a trust kind of thing. So my question is, how do we kind of go back and build that? How do I establish that trust and that relationship with my consultants and my board members so that we can get everything done whenever they really came in not knowing who the other was? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so one of the things is I would encourage your board to read the contracts for the consultant. So what was the relationship? What was the intent in coming into that relationship? I would encourage you to invite the consultants to a board meeting.
We have.
To just get to know each other. This is who we are. This is how we do our work. And then be sure that folks, there's somebody on the board, not just you, but somebody's working with you and the consultants to broker those relationships. We too have had that challenge. Folks are like, well, who the hell is Leela? I'm a board member. Like, who is she?
Yeah.
And so, like, we have to do our due diligence. You're kind of the gray there, the glue, to make everybody work together. So I would just say, just continue to have maybe some one-on-ones. I don't know how you're organized, if you have committees that do different things, but just really thinking about your consultants. I call them cousins and aunties, big cousins and aunties. Like,
Yeah.
I would suggest you also reassess whether you need whatever was in the original contract.
Yeah.
That's the
And
thing.
if there's room to kind of reimagine.
The context of what we're actually trying to accomplish with them. Because I think they're not from our region at all. And so I think that that's where that distrust comes from. Not that they're not doing a good job but that we've had to make all of the connections for them. that they didn't have any of those connections to make. And like, we're brand new to this game too, so we don't have a lot of connections either. So I think that's kind of where it's coming in, and it's not that I feel they're doing a good job with what we asked them to do, but maybe what we asked them to do isn't what we need them to do. So we didn't have a contract, we had an MOU. So it is possible to go back and restructure that, even
yes.
though we're kind of in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
Even under the best circumstances, things change.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, and we are literally changing, every week there's some new
Flexible.
change. Yeah. So that's really helpful, thank you. I think that's probably the best way to do it, is just to reevaluate the MOU and then go from there with the board and with
Right.
my subcommittees and stuff, and working with the consultants and myself.
And you should just, you can also assert yourself as like, you guys have paid me to do this thing, so, and this is my charge.
Absolutely, that's a good point too.
And consultants realize that things change too, and so whether it's, especially if you have an out in a contract, they should be willing to talk with you and either rewrite a contract that's already out there, amend the contract, terminate a contract, whatever you need to do. No one's looking to charge you for work that you don't need.
Absolutely.
And we have done that
And-
with clothing.
Okay, see, and that, yeah.
I feel like we've done that too,
So,
kind of rearranged contracts that we've had when the opportunities have changed. I feel like we've done that, right?
wonderful. And that's encouraging, because I've never, like I said, all new at this, so I've
And
never
the
worked with.
consultants that we were working with were very receptive to be like, yeah, we see that life has changed for you guys, so let's step back and.
And we rewrote to a larger contract too.
Yeah.
It worked out.
Right.
Yeah, if it's
Absolutely.
already on your
Yeah.
board, it's probably getting a little
Makes sense.
uncomfortable for the consultants too.
Yeah, no,
Somebody's gonna
I
do
know it
that
is.
work.
And that's what I'm
So,
trying
you
to
know,
avoid,
they
is I
can't
really
do
want
positive.
peace and harmony and love and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like there's a little bit of tension that's creeping in, and so that was my biggest, how do I circumvent that and really get done what we need to get done with them, because we want to stay on our opening operational timeline, and I'm afraid that if there's too much scuffle in the middle, it's really going to set us behind what we already kind of are because of the, build out weights and things along those lines, and machinery. So.
Any question here?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a pivot, but I was curious to hear a little bit more. You were talking about how with your consultant for your market study, you needed to adapt that model so it better fit your values and your community's context. And I was curious, like, what did that process look like of working with the consultant to adapt that, like, previous model or process?
Well, a few things. We've done a ton of work that kind of fed into the market study model. So we've done 2 rounds of surveying of our community of potential customers and potential owners. And so we had some data there. And then we had done some site considerations. And so Keith came in with his own model, but then he had all this other data and information that we were able to give him, so that his model was provided more of a local context, because we had kind of done that work. I know that market study is a whole thing right now. It's a sticky kind of thing, simply because the models for market studies isn't really keeping up with the conditions of the retail market right now. And so if you're struggling with your market study consulting, you're not alone. We didn't really struggle with Keith. We just knew that he had a particular way in which he was doing it, and it probably 70% met our needs and maybe 30% not. And you will find that with many of the market study consultants right now, particularly if you're working in a low-income community, whether it's urban or rural. Just the models right there out right now are just, they're not perfect.
Like, do you have a process that you would recommend for like assessing consultants and how well that worked for you, so that we can, use that information for like the next time we're trying to hire
So,
someone?
not only did we put out an RFP or whatever, we interviewed people, just like it was a job. So we,
I guess I'm
we got
sorry,
10.
assessment after the work is done, like,
Oh.
like looking back on how that work went,
Afterwards.
yeah.
I guess we got some informal stuff, and it's like, oh, they did a good job. Oh, it was okay. I don't know that we've had a formal evaluation of consultants, but I mean, I think we kind of know, kind of get a feel. If we felt like the work was good enough, And sometimes you'll hire a consultant to do a thing and you take half of what they offer you. Like we're experts, but it's your project. So you don't have to listen to us at all. You pay us and not listen to us. I would advise that if you're paying somebody, hopefully that you're following what they do, but we're advisors, we're consultants. So ultimately you get to make a decision about whatever thing it is. So just know that you don't have to be hell-bent and, on like the consultant's work is the Bible, but use that as a guide for your work. And sometimes you just pick the wrong person, and it's okay. You just gotta raise some more money to hire somebody else. What other, yes?
Well, I'd like to point out, excuse me, about making sure the leadership is sharing the knowledge, whatever it is they're gaining from this or that consultant. And so that kind of adds to the leadership's responsibilities, not just work with the consultant, but make sure that team that you refer to as, overseeing the consultant actually works to spread that knowledge.
Right.
And that's more than just financial, right? Other fields as well.
And it helps with your governance of your team. So it's not like, well, Ms. Reverend Bernadine said we gotta do this. Well, she's being informed by the consultants that she's working with who've got, X amount of years in the business. So it's not just her saying it, it's her being guided and you're sharing that knowledge with your team.
Catching a plane.
Thank you.
Ben, Don, these are my colleagues from Culminate. Do you guys have any nuggets to share?
This is really great. Ask lots of questions. Yeah, I thought that if at lunch, the whole description of what Fertile Ground did in really like thoughtfully coming at how do we approach a market study, that part of that process is called an RFQ, or request for qualifications. And, that can also be an RFP, or request for proposal. And those are kind of formal processes that Cass is talking about, but really just thinking about what do we want, what do we want to get, what kind of relationship do we want to have. And when you're talking to people, Cass, like one of the things I think that y'all were really good at Louisville is like looking for people who are listening, right? Who are asking questions and not just telling you, how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you want folks who are just as curious about your community as you are, as you love it. If oftentimes you do get folks who are not from your community, but to Don's point, you want to know that they care and that they're committed, from their perspective just as much as you are to, the vision of actualizing your goal.
I also thought it was interesting that both in a rural context and in your urban inner city context, the issue arose of whether the consultant really gets the community or whether they understand it appropriate for your needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have been bouncing around, I know Leela and I, on this kind of whole market study conversation and challenge and opportunity, I think, with just kind of being open about who you work with. So in the rural and inner city context, we've got a lot of corner stores and Family Dollar stores. And so I've been curious, like, who does their market studies?
Right.
And like, how can we adapt some data or some information from them to apply to these communities? Because they're operating pretty successfully in our communities. So that's just a tidbit, just kind of being open to using different things that you think are gonna provide some insight as to what you're doing.
So I want to touch base with you on market studies later. But in the meantime, one suggestion, or I think one question that's really important, because you don't want to have to do, you want to take as much off your plate as you can and have the consultants work for you as hard as they can. I think especially as you get into the design phase, as you're talking to store planners, to architects, to engineers, understanding how they're going to talk to each other and how they coordinate with each other, to some extent with your market analyst and your pro forma analyst, same types of questions, the ones that are going to be working together, make sure that you're comfortable with the arrangements that they set up for coordination, for talking, all that sort of stuff, and that you understand that going in, and that that's priced into the contracts. Because sometimes there's an extra fee for that, sometimes there's not. if it's my time and my money and I have the money, I want to make them, have a little bit of time in their budgets to be able to coordinate appropriately.
That's a great point, John. There was a mention of RFQs and RFPs. I just want to clarify the difference. So RFPs are your asking to request for proposals. So this is a thing that we want done. We're taking proposals from people to do that. RFQs are requests for qualifications. So it's more of a who's out there and what do they have, and it's almost like a lineup. You're just kind of checking out who's out there, and then you kind of follow up. You might ask them for a formal proposal after you kind of look at the RFQ responses. So I just wanted to share that for those who may not know. And we're probably going to do an RFQ for our design kind of pre-development team kind of work to kind of, again, see who's out there, because we haven't found an architect that's designed grocery stores.
Yeah, we're having that problem too. I haven't been able to find anybody that's designed a processing cooperative like what we're wanting to do. So yeah, it's an issue.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What did you do specifically to let your outside consultants understand your specific community and the needs of your specific community? Because my thought is, these market studies and things that are out there, they're kind of really general, right? They might not be aware of the specific issues on your community.
That's a really good question. So we landed on developing a cooperative grocery store after 20 years of other things, of a lot of food access work, local food system work. So there was a body of work that existed that some of us were a part of and others of us had kind of read. So there was a group of folks who came together and studied hunger in our community. So there's a report on that. Our local government had done a report on what's the capacity for our community to support local food, like Kentucky farmers. So that was a report on that. I'd worked with another nonprofit some time ago. We were organizing farmers markets and we had done a community food assessment in the neighborhood, so there was already a report. So you may not be doing the research, but maybe there's someone else in your community who's done some community development report or something else that's informing your local economy, and give your consultants that stuff. What's the information that you've gathered yourself that's led you to doing the co-op? That's golden for the consultants to read and share that information. So for us, I think we had this body of work in our community about grocery stores closing, about the importance of supporting, the local food economy, about how everybody in our community really wants local food, and 1 out of 5 people are hungry. So we had all this work, and then we had done our own kind of 2 sets of surveying in our community that we were able to hand over to our market study consultant. So another reason that we chose him is because he had done some market study work in our community some time ago. So he was somewhat familiar, and then had worked in the region as well. So he was somewhat familiar with Louisville, and then we supplemented all this other information.
Back to the request for proposal and request for qualifications. Does the RFQ or imply a broader search and more avenues for, seeking people, more listings or more broad?
Yes, I think about an RFQ when you're not really clear on who you're looking for. So the RFQ kind of gives you some.
So you need more.
Like these are the people who do this kind of work, and then you can kind of follow up on the folks that have really piqued your interest based on the qualifications that they've
So
shown.
first you have to fish a little more widely if you're not sure.
Yeah, how do you go about putting out an RFQ? That's what that's something that I see, I know. That's probably a way longer question we got time for.
Let's all share that question.
Post it in the local newspaper and hope someone looks at it.
Yeah, I think about like industry groups, so if you're looking for, I don't know, whatever the thing is, kind of find where those people are or hang out, or the associations they're a part of. Always use your own website and your own kind of channels. Talk to your friends, talk to partners, other organizations in the community to say, hey, we're looking for this. And it doesn't matter who they are. Like, everybody knows somebody else who knows somebody else. So just use your network, your local networks, and try to use like industry stuff.
And if it's like a startup co-op, maybe check if there's a few in your area, maybe 50, 100 miles away, and ask who they use and what they found from that experience.
I bet FCI would be a good place to connect and share. Say, I'm looking for this kind of person.
That makes sense.
Were you here on Thursday?
No, I was here, but I was not in the sessions because my face was also that mine was closed.
The local
There's a
food
really
truck.
interesting
I missed it.
distributing company that did some speaking on Thursday, and I don't remember their name.
My one of my board members was there, so I'll ask her.
Reach out to them, they might be able to help kind of push you in the right direction and getting information.
Yeah, because we're kind of
Your
ready.
question?
No,
Oh,
And they're totally different markets, so.
yes.
just generally, if you're thinking about a request for qualification, which is really saying, like, who are you, right? And why should we work with you? Like, two of the big areas you might be thinking about would be like construction and architecture, and there are local, like the American Institute of Architects, has local chapters. And there's I can't remember what it's called for contractors, but there's somewhere in Louisville, for example, there's an office of that, contractors all belong to an organization and they'll distribute it.
Mm-hmm. We have like a local kind of nonprofit association. That's a place where a lot of people put out job postings and things of that nature.
And he was suggesting the chamber, which is actually a very good idea, which is because you can call your chamber and go, hey, I need a contractor, and they'll tell you who the organizations are in your community.
I was at our chamber dinner, and I didn't realize this contractor was across me. Like, oh, I just found out our firm actually worked with the Menominee or something. So it's just like, oh,
wow, that's cool.
Sometimes they're closer to resources than
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and just for working with architects, because I happen to be one.
Okay, yeah.
You have, what happens a lot of times is like, if you got a specialty that you need, you'll work with a design architect, and then you'll have a local architect that's the architect of record.
Okay.
That kind of association works all the time, where the design architect will do all the front end sort of technical stuff, and then hand it
Because
off
they'll
to
have the
the
state license, right?
state licensor, and then I'll hand it off to the local architect of record, who will actually help you through construction and work with contracting.
Okay,
That's good to know.
So,
thank you.
And of course, one way is you come to conferences like this,
Yeah.
and then those technical design experts
Yes,
have tables here. And
Yeah, I've got
You guys
influence
have
from every table down there. I think I talked to you yesterday, and yeah, that's.
You guys
I
have
wish
a
we would have known about this
lot of
last
work.
year. I think it would have really changed our trajectory a little bit. But that's okay. I mean, I still feel like we're on a good path. I worry that we're trying to move too quickly and that we've made some decisions in haste. But that's okay. I think there's still time to make those corrections and bring it back around.
Well, next year, we look forward to seeing how things turned out.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I'll be
we're
here.
gonna ask you, yeah.
Who we presenting?
Yeah.
What do y'all have dried and packaged? That's the question. What do y'all have dried and packaged?
Part two.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, other questions, comments? Yes.
Just to tag on to the sort of local versus national or specialized consultants, especially as it relates to architecture. I have found that a lot of the time you can find architects that have done grocery or restaurant. I think the ones from a technical standpoint that will perform best have done those sorts of things, but a lot of the time between sort of technical kitchen and refrigeration drawings, those are good spots to get an expert. Sometimes those can come through a distributor, sometimes that'll come through an equipment consultant. FCI should be a good resource. I'm sure Don can help out with some of that too, in terms of what do I like to keep close, what do I need to certainly have specialized and get. I think it's an important discussion to have as you're talking about, well, there are some things we want to build or keep locally, and there are some things that we're going to need outside help for a little bit further, and that's one of them is the refrigeration and sort of technical kitchen drawings.
Sort of picking up on that, what are most helpful arguments, like expertise or others, when you encounter resistance to the notion of hiring consultants? Within the organization, there's some resistance to hiring consultants. What are best methods for dealing with that?
I think you go back to that first slide, it's like, do we have the knowledge or expertise to do the thing? do we have the time to do the thing? So you might have somebody who's got the local knowledge, but that person just may be maxed out and not able to do it. And if you have the money to hire them and a team to support them. So kind of go back to those, why are we even considering this? Why is it important for us to get some outside help?
Or like a thing I went through once, there's 3 things to ask yourself. This is a business, but applies to get it, got it, want it, and that last one I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Or have the ability to do it. That capacity is a key one, you know, like, well, do you want to do this? Do you understand it? But do you have the capacity? You kind of have to check all 3 boxes, and I think it still applies for volunteers and organizers of, co-ops, because we all have other things going on too, and it doesn't do a good service to the whole mission and where you're going if you got someone, oh, I love doing that, but I just don't have time, but we need that to get done too, so.
Right.
That's where I think you can leverage that. We just have to invest in paying someone to do this. There's a lot of cool things, it'd be fun to learn how to do that, but I don't have time to learn how to do that. We're gonna keep things moving.
Just hire somebody to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Give Don a call or something.
Well, I'll hang out here for a little bit. I don't think I need to leave until about 2:30 on my flight. Head to the airport. So if you guys have questions more about managing consultants, I do planning and strategy, organizing and fundraising. So if you guys have any questions, and yes, please fill out the evaluation. Okay.